So thank you everyone for joining us. We have a very exciting guest with us today. We have Justin Hennessy, who is with me in Brisbane. I've met Justin a few years back when he was still working as Outfit. I think it was Outfit back then. And Justin has agreed to join us tonight to talk a bit about AI and give you some practical hands-on tips that you can use in your development work in the future. I'm not going to say too much because I'm going to leave the introduction to him, but if you have any questions, and we expect you to put all these questions in there, please put them in the Q&A section, and we can answer them either throughout or at the end of the presentation. All right. Then I'm going to mute myself and I'll give it to you, Justin.
All right. Let me just share my screen. Please don't be shy. Jump into chat. Emojis and comments and questions, please feel free. Okay, so firstly, I was very privileged to be asked to come and speak with you all. I actually have a very soft spot for Coder Academy. I think they're an amazing organisation. I've actually been working with them for what feels like about 10 years, so it's been quite exciting. So we're here to talk about how AI is going to augment the how and the what we build in. Now, just bear with me, I've lost. Lauren, just I've lost access to chat, so just.
Oh gosh.
Just a heads up.
Does that mean
I can't see it when I'm you might have to
presenting? Okay, that's okay. Should anyone say anything, I will let you know. I'll keep an eye on the chat on the questions.
Beautiful. All right. Just quickly about me and us. So 30 years in the industry. Started very young. 90-second sort of summary of my career is I started developing when I was about 9 years old with my dad. We used to get PC magazines and get basic code out and write it out on a Commodore 64, have little pixels jumping around on the screen. So I knew what I wanted to do fairly early on in my career. So I then got into traditional infrastructure, so switching, routing, data centers, and then I was very lucky to be involved in one of the biggest virtualization clusters set up of one of those in the very early days, and this is way before cloud and before all of that was a thing. I then moved into project management and people coaching, leadership, and mentoring, and that's where I started cutting my teeth on agile ways of working. So XP, Crystal, Scrum, etc. The technical was really important part of my my sort of journey. So I've sort of brought that back into my role and became a delivery manager, software delivery manager, but also started working in the cloud space, so cloud infrastructure. So and the early days of infrastructure as code. So and that became a sort of a centerpiece of my expertise for the next 10 years. And then I moved up into leadership, into a VP of engineering role, CTO role, and then the last 10 years I've been doing is CTO roles. I'm very passionate about AI. It's something that I've been sort of dabbling with and involved in for probably 5 or 6 years. In 2019, I did a 100 days of machine learning, where I built a model and deployed it into the organization I was in, just to get an understanding how it worked. And I'm very passionate about enabling people with AI and getting them to understand how it works and how it can be leveraged. So with a former colleague and I, we launched a AI agency about 3 months ago. And its core sort of philosophy is augmenting human potential. So, as you can tell, I love talking about. So, before we get into how does it directly impact development, I think a little bit of history is always good. So, in the early days of mobile, there was a technology called the T9 predictive text, and that was one of the first predictive models that would predict from keystrokes what the next word was. So it's sort of like the early days of autocorrect. Fast forward to 2018, Google came out with BERT, and BERT was a natural language processing model, and it was one of the first that could do, contextual text comprehension. So really start to get a better understanding of the relationship between words. So it was bidirectional, so it would go left to read, left to right, and right to left, and basically would enable it to sort of comprehend what the text is saying. But its limitations was that it had no generative capability. So then we shift into the generative AI, and the difference between the old technology and the new technology is not only does generative AI have a greater ability to comprehend, and we'll go into that a little bit later as to why it's not comprehending, but comprehend the relationship with the words, and not only can it do that, but it can also generate new content based on the context of the old content. All right, so what is a large language model? So a large language model is it's an AI system that is trained on a huge amount of data, like a vast corpus of data, which enables it to predict and generate human-like responses because it has a very vast map of the relationships of words and concepts, if you like. So, which is the older systems were not able to do that. So the shift to a more sophisticated technology came about when these things called transformers were introduced. Now, transformers are an architecture that power most large language models today. And unlike the old models, which process sequentially, large language models are able to handle lots and lots of words, and it can do it in parallel. And there are three main sort of components to a transformer. It's self-attention. So that is a mechanism that allows the model to focus on what's most relevant in the part that it's processing, and predicting relationships by analyzing the words in a sentence. Multi-head attention is basically it gives it the ability to do that, but in parallel. And then the last part of it is positional encoding. So obviously, just analyzing words in isolation obviously is of no use if you don't understand where they sit in the in the sentence. So it keeps track of where the words are in the sentence, which is really important. So there's a lot of hype around large language models. So it's important to talk about what LLMs are not. LLMs are not, they do not understand language the way that human beings do. One of the challenges that we've got at the moment is people are starting to attach labels to what large language models do. So, they're not intelligent. They have no understanding, and there's no consciousness, around what they do. So they generate text by prediction, and basically take and I say text, but now that we've got multimodal models, which means that you can feed in text, images, sound, video, predicting the next chunk, whatever that may be, whether it's a part of a video or part of an audio file, that kind of stuff. And there's no reasoning. So LLMs simulate reasoning patterns, but they do not engage in true logical deduction or thought processes. So again, it comes down to the next section, which what is it? It's actually just a very, very sophisticated prediction engine. So it's able to predict through patterns that it has learnt from its training data, which is vast, and it doesn't actually understand the context of that. So a good example of that is the strawberry test. So prior to GPT 4.01, the model, if you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. But basically, prior to some very, very recent models, If you were to ask a large language model, how many R's are there in strawberry, it will often get it wrong. Now, the reason why that is because it actually doesn't interact with the information in a language way. It converts it into a representation in numbers, and then is able to do some sophisticated things around relationships. So again, it's very good at predicting patterns, and they also don't have any memory. So the models themselves don't actually have any memory. So ChatGPT is an application which is built around a large language model, and that enables a lot of the other ancillary abilities like memory and contextual awareness of history of the conversation. That's actually built around the model. I'm happy, sorry, I should have said at the beginning, I just got straight into it. I'm happy to take questions at any time. So please, if anything pops up or you're curious about anything in particular, please drop it into the Q&A box, because I'd be very happy to answer those as we go. But we're going to have a lot of time at the end as well, hopefully. Okay, so why is generative AI inherently average? Again, it comes back to understanding what this technology is and how it actually came to be. So large language models are trained on a vast, diverse range of data. And so what that makes it is it makes it again, large language models in particular, it makes it a very generalized technology. So, even though it's got a very broad knowledge of things, if it's not given specific guidance or direction or context, then the thing that you're going to get out is the most average predicted pattern for the thing that came before it. So a good example of this is I've had a conversation with a few customers where they go, look, I tried AI and I put it down because it was no good. It was average. And we'll talk about how to make it not average in a second. Lack of context. So you'll hear a lot of the word context thrown around with large language models, and all it means is the detail that you give it in the input to influence the output. So, okay, so what makes AI truly amazing? AI plus expertise plus data. So to not get average outcomes out the other side, you want to take the generalized technology, you want to inject either programmatically or human, what we call human in the loop expertise, and then you want to inject into the context or the input data. So the human part of it helps to guide the LLM to specific problems to refine its output, and then the data, the model or the request fine-tuned with data, then enables it to make more accurate and useful responses. All right, any questions so far? I'll just take a quick drink.
Not in the chat, not in Q&A.
Okay. I can see
everyone's
the Q&A.
listening to you all.
Yeah, I can see the Q&A, so that's all good. All right, so how does it affect you? Large language models are not just trained on language; they're actually trained on code, and there are different types of models too that are more fine-tuned for the code space. So how does it augment what we do in the coding space? So code generation and auto completion, it should be a relatively no-brainer. We've had auto completion for some time, but this is way more contextually aware autocomplete. So a good example, I use it all the time in my editor. You know, I might be putting in some logging above a block of code, and then I'll go to the bottom and I'll either be putting a bit more code or a bit more logging, and more often than not, it'll actually show me a representation of what it thinks I'm going to do next, and quite often it's actually right. So you press tab, and then suddenly you've got a full line or a full method of code that you were going to type out anyway, which is pretty cool. So code scaffolding and project setup. So you know, you might want a really quick and nasty sort of API structure. So I think Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your classes do Python. So
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. So Python has a web server called Flask. A server called Flask, and you know, you can use that for API endpoints. So you can very quickly stand up a rough scaffold of an API or a project.
We actually teach that as well. Sorry to interrupt you. We teach them on Flask, and we also, one of our projects that students have to do is create an API web server. It's one of the assessments.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So this helps you quickly and rapidly get something that you can work with. And what's really good, and I'll demo some of this later, but what's really good about this is that it's not just a one-shot engagement. It's multi-shot. So you might want to describe, okay, I'm building this particular thing. I think I need this object and this object, and I think this is how they're connected. Can you draft me, just some empty classes and methods with some pseudocode just to see what that looks like. So that's really cool. Algorithm implementation. Think of any kind of algorithm that is in maths or is in programming. So search algorithms like binary tree searching or quick sorting is another another type of algorithm where you can literally write me a method that does quick sorting, and it'll spit it out for you. Testing and debugging, super important, obviously, and it is actually the thing that I use. Well, we know code breaks all the time, so it's actually the thing I use the large language model for a lot. Excuse me. So you're able to give it the code that you're working on, give it the error message that you're getting. You're going, I'm not sure what the problem is, but I think it might be here, and then it'll give you some insights as to try this, or add this to your code, or often it'll say put some more logging in, or some exception handling, and then you go from there. But I think the most powerful thing is understanding, and I'm going to show some live stuff, which is actually coming up very soon. So gaining understanding around code that you don't know is super important, because it's very rarely that you're going to go out into the workforce and go to a place where we're building a project from what we call greenfield, so no code at all. You're pretty much always going to end up in a place where there's existing code, and being able to ramp up and get across how that code works as quickly as you can, obviously, is really important. All right, so there are so many tools out there to do this stuff that I have lost count. I have been trialing a bunch of them, so I just put a few on the screen, and I will do some demos in a sec about them. But some of these are web-based things. Some of these are command line things. So AdaChat is one that works actually at the command line locally, which is good, because if you wanted to work completely locally, AdaChat enables you to do that with a local model. So you can actually deploy a large language model locally, and then you're completely offline. So let me just get these windows organized. You over there, you over there. Okay, and sorry, you over there. So one of the things that I do with now, can I can't see chat. I was going to say, if you, I'm just interested how many people. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm really keen to see the.
That's okay. I can tell you if you need to. Yeah.
In chat, give me a thumbs up if you've played with any kind of large language model. So you play with ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Claude, Anthropic's Claude, like just played with it. And then 2 thumbs up if you've actually used it to do code interpretation and you use it on a regular basis. Just super curious. Okay, nice. Okay, a bit of a mixture. Excellent, excellent. Okay.
Don't be shy. That's not everyone. I was like, yeah, see, there's more coming. There we go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, because I definitely don't want to bore you with something you've already seen, but it looks like enough people have. So Claude, if you don't know, is one of the competitors to OpenAI's GPT. Claude is created by Anthropic, and Anthropic was actually founded by members of OpenAI because they didn't believe in the philosophy that OpenAI were following to get to their goal. They actually wanted to do things in a different way. So their model is called Claude. So I often use Claude to do design mockups. And Claude, about 2 months ago, 1 month ago, came out with a feature called Artifacts. And Artifacts is you give it a request. So we're doing a mockup design, use Tailwind and JavaScript. Want a modern, slick-looking interface. We want a upload reports and files menu and include a drop-down box of customers. So you can see the code being generated on the right. In a second when it's done, it will also render the code. So you'll actually be able to see the finished product live. I'll just let it do that. Boom, done. So from a single prompt, we now have the scaffolding of a quite nice looking UI that has done everything that I asked it to do. So it's got multiple customers. It's got a drop-down box for interaction type and file type. And it's got sort of other areas. So the beauty of this sort of interface is that, again, it's not one shot. So you can actually go, okay. Sorry, have I deleted it? Okay, so and at the moment, the report section is empty. So we might go, okay, now populate the reports area with a list of mock reports and make it different for each customer. So then it will do an update to the code. It'll generate the new code on the right hand side, and then once it's done, hopefully, we will have a working prototype. Now, what's cool about this is that you can take this and then you can then bring it into a different workflow, which I'll show in a minute, around where you can actually merge that code together. You can actually go, oh, this concept worked really well. Show me or tell me how I might integrate this approach with my code, and then it will give you some insight into that. So if we go to the reports page, it now has reports, and as we change customers, it changes the reports. So so the difference between a Claude and ChatGPT actually has internet access. So a bit of a demo of why that's important is I can give it a website. I say, here's some API doco. Read that website. Now write me a Python method that will test the API, and then I can pass in a title to it. That's right. Just realized my notes are the wrong notes. Anyway, so as you can see, there it is. The ChatGPT is actually scraping the API documentation, and then it's actually using that as context to then answer your request. Okay, let me. Okay, so here we go. So that's basically the detached version. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly show you the. So you go, well, that's all very well and good, but how do I actually use that day to day? Like, how is that useful to me? So let me just share. So again, thumbs up in chat. Does anyone use Visual Studio Code, VSC, as an
Another
editor?
thing we include in our course.
Beautiful. All right. So if you are that, what I'm about to show you is a very closely aligned editor called Cursor. So Cursor. It actually behaves the same as Visual Studio Code and can also import plugins. But you can actually get a plugin for Visual Studio Code, which is called Cline, so Cline. It's in the slides, which you can put that in, and then you can do similar things to what I'm about to show you. All right. Okay, so what you're looking at is this is actually an application that I'm working on at the moment, and it's a hobby project, but it's I'm doing it so that I can get a much deeper understanding on a couple of things. How do I integrate generative AI and large language models in particular into applications? And then the extension of that is, I'm sure you've heard by now the term agent, or agentic behavior and capability. I'm trying to get a better understanding on how that all hangs together as a technology. But as I said, one of the most important and crucial things to think about with this technology, it's about understanding. So you turn up to a new job, you literally are checking out the repo, and you've got to get across, how does this thing work? So I'm actually going to go from the inside out because. So say, for instance, we've got this method here, and we go, can you explain to me how this method works? So it is contextually aware of the file that I am in, because you can see it here, and then it gives me a breakdown of how it works. So, okay, all right, that makes sense. So now, sorry, let me see if I can find my other notes. Anyway, I'll see if I can do it off the top of my head. So so that's all well and good. So now simulate how this method would work, and give me some examples on how this would show up in the logging. So again, because it's contextually aware of the file that we are in, so what it's doing is it's generating a number of examples and feeding it through that method, because it can see the code, it knows how the code works, although it doesn't know how the code works. It understands the pattern that the code is, and then it gives you a bunch of examples on, this is how the logging works when a server starts, or when it generates an error, or when it refreshes an OAuth token, those kinds of things. So again, that's pretty cool. But what happens if you want to get visibility, or you want to ask a question of the whole application, or a big chunk of the application? So what we do is we give the large language model a view of. So what I just did was I added all open files up the top here. I added all open files to the context. So what that means is now the large language model has access to all of the code in all of those files. So give me a summary of what this application is, and what are the major objects that are involved. So again, because it's got all of the context to all of the code, it knows how all the code is connected together. So, the application appears to be a multi-service chatbot system with AI capabilities. Here's a summary of the major components. So it'll go through each of the files and it'll tell you roughly what that file is about.
I really like there that even though you made a typo in application, it's like, yeah, no worries. We're just reading over it to still see it as application.
That's it. Yeah. So it's very forgiving in that respect, and it needs to be, because I type fast and the error rate is high.
Is that also with the code? Because code, you can't have typos in there. Your code won't work, right?
So it's a good question, actually. It will give you the answer that is correct. It won't put your mistake in the code. So, well, it depends. If it's a label, like if it's a label or a method that you've spelt incorrectly, then maybe it won't. But yeah, it is actually quite forgiving. Remembering that it has context of what came before. So if you were, it was correct, and then you made a typo down further, it'll actually infer back to what it knew from the conversation before. But again, you don't blindly trust this stuff. You obviously know you need to keep eyes on what it's actually doing. So, okay, so that's really cool. So, but what if I wanted to know how far are we? What if we wanted to know how far, how does the actual application hang together? So draw me an ASCII diagram of all the objects in this application and show me how they are connected. So again, because it's got context of all of the files, actually lost the content, it's okay. So it'll go through, it knows what a class looks like, so then it starts to map out the actual architecture of the application, and you can see how things are actually hung together. So last thing I'll do on this one is, how are we going for time? Yep. Last thing we'll do on this one is I need to understand how scalable my application is. Simulate, show me n number of messages going through the application, and show me where the application scales out and mark any constraints. Yep. So essentially what I'm asking is, if we put lots of messages in the front, where is the application going to, where potentially will the application start to have issues? So now you can see that, okay, well, we now know that there's a message queue inside of the code, and it has workers, and the workers scale out. But now it's showing you that, oh, okay, well, maybe this rate limiting process that happens here, there might be a constraint there, or the AI agent, there might only be one instance of that. So last thing is I just wanted to show sort of the cutting edge of where this stuff is at, and it is by far not perfect, but I think it's a good it's a good insight as to where is it? Sorry, where this stuff is going. Hang on a sec. Where the hell to go? Replit. Where are you, Replit? Okay. Hang on.
Out of curiosity, how many screens do you have, Justin?
I only have one, but it's ginormous. It's a it's a 49-inch convex screen. So literally, it's 3 screens all in one.
An
It's
arched one?
big, yeah, a curved one. It's,
Yeah.
it is
Curved
the
one,
most
yeah.
amazing thing I've ever owned. It's just incredible. Okay. Hang on. Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry, I'll quickly show this. So this is a platform called Replit. It has a IDE that is collaborative, so you can use it like Google Docs, so developers can actually do collaborative coding. But the cool thing about this this is they are beta testing a thing called I'm trying to find, there it is. They're beta testing a thing called the Replit agent, and what it is a fleet of autonomous processors that code. So if I give it a brief of what my application is, I want it to be Tailwind and Python. I want it to be a shopping list application. I want to paste in a list of items. I want it to sort it into where I might find it in the shop. And then I want to be able to tick the box to say I've actually got it. Now, what's cool about this is it does everything end to end. It'll assess the request that you've given it. It'll suggest a plan, which it's going to do in a sec. And yep, so we're going to just build the prototype. So it does everything end to end. So it starts to write the Python backend and the main application. It will then move on to the front end. So it'll start to flesh out the user interface. It then does the JavaScript, so it hooks all of the interface together. And then it'll do any styling that is needed. But also it will do all of the package installing. So it'll do the package management for Python, and it'll do the package management for the front end. And then it deploys it into a virtual environment, and then it will give you a preview as to what the application looks like. And you can actually deploy that to a publicly facing URL, and the application works straight out of the box. So if I just demonstrate this, let me just put there we go. There you go. So it sorts them all into the areas, and now I can tick the boxes and go, yep, I've got that, I've got that, I've got that. So just to wrap up, because I know that we are getting fairly... So risks are really important. Over-reliance on suggestions. Be very careful about blindly copying and pasting, but that hasn't changed. So you would never go to Stack Overflow, well, you try not to anyway, Stack Overflow, copy and paste, and not understand the code that you're putting in it. AI and large language models have no contextual awareness as to what the code is doing. So the nuances of your application, it is not aware of. So you could solve a problem locally, but globally break some application structures or architecture. Inconsistent code, unoptimized code, and security vulnerabilities. You've got to remember what these things are trained on. They're trained on lots and lots of data coming from all sources. Some rubbish sources, some great sources. So again, you've got to be very careful of that. And above all else, make sure you understand what's being done with your data. So make sure that when you interface with these services that you understand what the terms and conditions are around data, because there is a thing called regurgitation risk, which is a large language model can, in its response, respond with exactly the data that it was trained on or chunks of it. So if you put proprietary code into a large language model and it gets trained on it, there is that. It's a minuscule risk, but it's still a risk, and it's something you have to be very cautious of. I won't go too heavily into this, and to be honest, this is probably a topic all on its own. But where we are going is this agentic capability. So everything that we do going forward is going to be influenced by this. Applications and the way applications work and the way they the UIs is all going to start to become very very dynamic and very very quote unquote smart. The challenges and considerations to think about with this stuff is basically user trust and adoption, I think, is actually going to be quite challenging because people don't necessarily like magic. So again, raising the awareness of how this technology works is really important. To do that, you've got to be transparent and explain how the thing works. So often you need to show how the AI is actually working, like it's, the working column. Ensure that these agents are not getting access to and using data, private data and sensitive data in wrong ways, and also ethical uses of AI. So sort of to wrap up the talk, basically, agentic capability is going to continue to advance, and it's going to transform everything that we do. And it's something that it's very important to keep your eyes on. It's going to create seamless integrations between agents, workflows, and other systems. Again, there's a whole topic on RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, which is around natural language input and querying of traditional services, but it figuring out how to get the information from a key value store or a database or whatever. As developers, it's crucial that you keep eyes on this stuff, dabble with it, and I would be using it every single day to at least understand how this stuff is going to be impacting the way that you work, because it will make you a better developer, and it will make you more productive and more efficient when it's used in the right way. This is me. If you would like to ask me any questions, please feel free. I'm very happy for you to come directly to me. I stream on Twitch, mostly music. As you can see, we have a bit of a setup in the background here, but I've just started streaming live coding. And I've done that because I think a lot of people are curious about how do you use AI day to day. Like, there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of wishy-washy things, but people aren't actually sure how to use it, in a daily use. I have a couple of GitHub accounts, my LinkedIn, and the website for my agency. Thank you.
Amazing. This is even for me with a no code, non-technical background. I was like, oh, I can follow this, although I don't know the ins and outs about the code, of course. But I'm really glad you spoke about because initially I was like, okay, great. Why isn't everyone using this? Why isn't everyone just copying that? Why do we even need developers? And then came the whole risk part. And I was like, this is why we need the knowledge. We need someone to actually check if it is working right. And we can't give them access, obviously, to sensitive data. But I really like the agents, the agents, AI agents, what they can do now was really impressive.
Yeah, a couple of good questions. So fantastic tools, but having multiple paid subscription wouldn't personally be viable as a student. So that is absolutely true. That is why you can locally deploy a lot of this stuff. So if you look into Ada Chat, AIDER chat, which is a Python installer, and the Llama model, which is the Meta large language model, it's actually just as good as Claude and ChatGPT, and it's completely free. So you can use it locally. Very happy to point you in the right direction on how to get. I literally got that set up within 20 minutes because there's a very cool service called Ollama, which is like a package manager for large language models, and makes getting them up and running locally very easy. It's clear all around winner in terms of features. Yeah, so that's how you do it with so you don't need money. There are plenty of tools out there to do it without that. Do you feel that AI influences or will influence imposter syndrome? Now, do you mean imposter syndrome or Dunning-Kruger effect? Because I think they're very different. I think AI is going to improve imposter syndrome in that I think it's going to help people really get a much greater grasp of how things work. The Dunning-Kruger effect, which is, I am now an expert, but you get to the top of the hill and then you go down into the valley of despair when you realize you actually don't know anything. I think there's a big danger of that because you feel like you're writing lots and lots of code and you're getting lots and lots done. But if you don't understand how the code works, then obviously that's a much bigger problem. So these tools are not a replacement, and I think they are a long way away from being full replacements. That's why I always talk about AI augmenting people, not replacing them.
Do we have any other questions? I know you guys have them. Start writing them down. This is your opportunity to ask questions to Justin, which you don't have on an everyday basis. Anything that you think he can help you with, that you can ask him, that you would like to know. There we go. We got one more. How long do you think it will take until AI will get to a point where it could replace coders or developers?
I think there is always going to be a place for people who understand software. I think the nature of how software engineering is done will change, but I don't think it will go away. So I think it's very similar to similar but not the same, but it's very similar to the industrial age where you had a lot of manual people in the factories, and then they brought in conveyor belts, and then people got displaced into other jobs. So sure, you can argue that people got displaced, but I think the point is that we really don't know what the world is going to look like once this stuff starts to mature. I think we're going to start seeing roles that we never dreamed about. So I read a book a couple of years ago that talked about, we're going to have a HR department for human resources, and we're going to have an MR department for machine resources, which is literally, looking at ethics, bias, and accuracy, and, whether or not the artificial intelligence is doing its job properly. So what are the potential limitations or challenges of relying on LLMs for code generation completion? Again, use it as a tool for understanding, not a tool to do the job. Because and that was number one on the list of the risks. Over-reliance on it is definitely a risk, because it's very easy to go, it's written the code for me, I'm just going to copy and paste it in, job done. So again, use it as a tool for learning, experimenting. You now have the capability of getting to dead ends, which is really important in software, really quickly. Actually, that was crap. Oh man, that was amazing. So we're going to go down that way. So instead of taking a week, it might take you, sorry, there's a siren in the background. Instead of taking a week, it might take you a day. You might be able to test a lot of hypotheses much more quickly. Where do you recommend students who want to work with AI begin learning with? Which projects can you recommend? Okay, so that's a good question. So look, I'm a big fan of LangChain and LangGraph. So LangChain is a framework that is purely built for helping developers integrate generative AI into their code. I think that's a good place to start. And I'm only early on the journey on LangGraph. How much time have we got? This is actually very cool. And honestly, I could geek out about this for a lot. So this, what you're looking at here this is actually the logic engine behind an agent. So at the top is where the request comes in, and this is like, think of it like as a decision tree. So and within the agent, you've got tools, which are functions that it decides whether or not it needs to use them. So, for instance, if I go, hey, Sarah, what time is it in Berlin? Now, a large language model doesn't have that information. So for it to have that capability, you've got to build in tools to be able to do that. So, so you'll see that it basically goes into the conversation, and it realizes that, I've got a tool that I can get the current time for. And I can pass in a location, and then this didn't work, of course. But the idea is you build capability around the large language model to be able to make decisions on, there's a tool to do that. Go and search the internet or whatever. So
look at the answer though. Want to talk about music instead?
Yeah. So this is the chatbot for my Twitch channel, for my music channel. So her name is Sarah, and I built a bit of a personality into it. So and you'll see that here there's a summarization part. So if I keep going and go, we are live at Coder Academy. Academy, say hi. Because part of what this does, it's got a memory mechanism built in as well. So it keeps track of what's happening prior. And then now what you can see is when you get a bunch of messages, it will actually start to summarize that message. So it's like a short-term memory, long-term memory sort of mechanism. So she can keep track of, over the long term, the kinds of things that were talked about over a longer period of time. So yeah. So that's what they call a state graph. So that essentially is like, think of it like the decision logic and reasoning logic for the inside of an agent. So
we got a few more questions.
Yep.
So let's just go quickly through them, because I know some students have classes starting soon.
Students work with the VN. Yeah. So as I said, look, get across LangChain and LangGraph. There's really good tutorials on YouTube, and just do the 101s. It's the same as with the code assistants, Ada and Cursor and Klein. There's heaps and heaps of YouTube videos, which is good. Which AI tool do you think is the best, most efficient for developers? I use Cursor. So Cursor is it literally looks and feels exactly the same as Visual Studio Code, but you can plug in Klein to use with your current setup. Talking towards your musician side, I love talking about music too. So how does Creator you feel about the rise of generative AI? So I'll leave you with a statement. The cost of average is going to go to zero, and by that what I mean is anything that was done in a mediocre way is probably going to be impacted by AI in some fashion, whether it be design, whether it be artistry, whether it be music. There is always going to be a space for human creativity. So we already have mass-produced music. It's not AI generated, but it's generated by big corporations who are just trying to make money. It's just going to be a shift in that direction where AI becomes a big component of that. Especially when it comes to copyright infringement. Yeah, copyright infringement is super grey. Nobody knows who owns what, and there's a big argument at the moment as to, we talked about the big corpus of data that large language models is trained on. There's questions about whether or not that data was actually legally able to train on. So watch that space. That's going to get a bit messy over the next couple of years. Would you bring a further study? Okay, I'm going to answer that question in a self experience. I have no formal training in software. I did not go to university. I am completely self-taught. Everything that you want to learn about this stuff is available to you, and I would say 90% of it is free. All you need is motivation. So motivation and intent. Make sure that you are clear as to what you want to learn, because learning everything is not possible. So be very clear about the problem space you want to solve, or where you actually want to be, and then double down on that.
And it's, you need the discipline as well, self-discipline to keep going, because that's the whole thing, right? If you can't do that, then the school would be better. But you guys are all here and class is starting, so I'm assuming you signed up so someone can help you with the discipline and teach you everything. Thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you, Justin, for being able to share your knowledge with us. I hope everyone found it insightful. I will share the recording and the slides probably sometime tomorrow on Discord. Hope you'll have a good night and good luck with your classes.
Thank you all.
Thanks.